You see, for us to deal with corruption and to have dealt with the anti-corruption team, we went and dig in the executive and says, what is your strategy towards corruption? And then we came across this anti-corruption board. That's why you see all of them here every day. Because we are determined as corporate to say, let's find the bodies that are working with and fighting and putting hands together and fighting corruption. But here today you have not told us with whom are you working. You need to give us a sense, Pakama, that we are working with mayors, we are working with so-and-so in provinces. At national, these are the entities that are dealing with us to put a collective effort so that you don't make an empty statement that says, we're looking for political goodwill. Whom are you asking us to go and look for? Mayors have got their own laws. You can't be anarchist here. Walk around grabbing mayors and bringing them to your office. You see. Give us the type of relations in terms of the law of how you have related to them. So that national parliament as an institution, we can, he knows, he's the chair of the committees, that they can go to other committees and say, but this disaster that we are looking for, 72 billion, can be an isolated fight of COCTA. How do we get all other chairpersons to support this particular effort? So that you work within the parameters of government and you'll make impact. But if you work very loose as an entity on its own, you're not going to succeed in government. I know different public civil servants. Civil servants, they would say, no, it's an Eskom problem. We are dealing with a quick payment that has to be given to small businesses. It has risen to a level where wherever we are, all of us have to put effort to get that payment to be done. How do we do it here with Eskom? We should look for that plan.
Okay.
A thorough plan that brings us into our own institutions created by governance, so that when we push each other, negotiate with each other, we don't do it outside the law. Police stations, why are they not paying? Where do we get the money for police stations? Because their lights are on the whole night. And it's not only in Joburg, they are there in those localities that they are counting out. Who pays their electricity? If you had told us that the police stations are not paying, we'll call the National Commission and ask him, why are you not paying in these areas? You give us a sense, because we don't work in this area, but give us a sense, Pakama, that who are the people who are not paying from national government? It encourages us so that the chair, before he starts the meeting, he says, one of the things that we must raise today with you, Sandral, you're not paying Eskom in these localities. So that we are able to tell the DG there, the treasurer there, that your people are not paying Eskom. That's why Eskom is going to collapse. You see? The DG likes to hear us saying those things to him. Because then we find a common strategy of how to deal with non-payment, not only on the basis of the municipalities, but also of national entities where they are located. But that plan can only be provided by you. If ministers are not cooperating with you, that plan can only be set by you. That the IMTT doesn't meet since we went into that board, since we came in and appointed as the body, no work has been done. Because I'm quite clear that no agency will listen to you when you say national government is not doing anything. It's taking a hands-off approach and leaving that responsibility to you. With us, Pagaman, take it from us. If it's about the job and commitment, you can't allow politicians to be on holiday. If you are afraid of them, tell us. We will stand in and go to the president ourselves. If you're a minister, you're a coward, or you're afraid of him, because he's not even here tonight. If your minister was taking you serious, you should have been seated here and spoken to us. suppose it's a crisis. You see? Now, because I don't even know which Minister of Energy, he's not here. How do you expect Parliament to take you serious?
All right.
Yeah, I'm just asking those questions as you're talking that. You are
Okay.
pleading a case of 72 billion. But your minister is not here. He's on holiday, he's sleeping. Scopa has taken a responsibility that is out of its fiduciary duty to try to rescue you. You are seated here eating to try to get a solution to a crisis that is supposed to have been done by the different ministries. So I'm just saying, also take it into your own soul and be a little bit honest to yourself that the plan is falling far short than what is expected. And find that plan. If you want to deal with Scopa, you want us to have commitment. Don't know, there's no minister that runs. We'll call that minister tomorrow morning and tell him we want you to sit here and listen to your crisis. Because Parliament has got the muscle to do that. But if you don't talk, you're afraid of your minister, don't transfer it to us. Deal with the problem.
Right. Okay. Yes, honourable member.
Chair, thank you for allowing me. I'm Desiree van der Walt. I'm actually a member of the Public Service and Administration Committee. But I also have a keen interest in the fact that I saw two of my municipalities in Limpopo is mentioned on this whole Eskom debt, and I'm glad Treasury is here as well. Chair, indeed, it was said by numerous colleagues here tonight that the end user at the end of the day is being punished. And I would like to know from Eskom, and I see your you go up to 90 days and then you end. But in fact, many of the millions of rands outstanding is not a short period as 90 days. Some of it is as old as 7 years, 11 years. I can even go back maybe 24 years. And I think that would be an honest summary to present to SCOPA is exactly which municipality since when owes what. And if you do that, the question would come up is why has it gone up this far? Why wasn't there strict controls when you go over your 60 or 90 days? Why? And Chairperson, is it then fair that a new term of office bearers and sometimes even staff in municipalities have to take over debt of others? My concern, Chairperson, is really, I can understand that Eskom and is a provider of electricity and that they have to collect as well. I don't want to go into that. But Chairperson, at the end, we are punishing people on the ground who for many years, many years, have paid every month their dues with regards to their Eskom electricity in municipalities. And cold-heartedly so, we are now going to cut municipalities whom Eskom couldn't hold to account to pay. If I don't pay my overdraft or my whatever accounts, I would lose it. But we come and people who pay the municipality must now be without electricity. And as colleagues have mentioned here, most of these towns are small towns where the economy is bad, where people are putting every single effort in to make a living, and they will be now cut off as well. And Chairperson, these businesses also have people working for them. So if I don't have electricity, I can't run my business. What's the first thing I do? I actually let people go. And then unemployment. So my real question, Chair, is what has Eskom done with one? And I know it's a different sphere of government, but surely in intergovernmental relations, there must be a municipal manager is an accounting officer together with a CFO. And surely they must be held accountable for not paying their debts. or run their municipalities in such a way that they can pay Eskom. So that should be a major concern as well for Eskom. And the second thing is, Chair, has Eskom ever looked at alternative methods of getting those consumers at the end of the day who are paying, who are not at default, for not cutting them, but cutting government departments nationally, provincially, and then go to the rest. But we cannot, there must be a way that we can actually say, if you pay your account every month, we can't cut your electricity. We can only cut those who don't pay, because that results into municipalities not paying. There must be a way. It can't be, there must be clever people who can work on a system. Otherwise, we must buy from the municipalities. It will be even worse, and not from Eskom. But Chair, I'm very concerned for the local people. And Morimoli Mokgopong and Tabazimbi, which is under new co-governance, is absolute victims of many years of non-payment to Eskom, and Eskom didn't do a thing about it over all the years. Thank you.
All right. Well, I allowed comrades to talk, so that we were able to look at both sides of the coin, which is the fact that Eskom is being owed a lot of money. That's a simple reality, and if that is not addressed, it might become unsustainable. And if that happens, then it means nobody will have electricity. So I hear everything, but I'm saying let us find a balance of these matters. Let's not lose sight of the fact that Eskom is owed for electricity that has been consumed, which must be paid for, and that the principle of paying for what you consume and what you get is, it's a simple and logical principle that does not require interpretation or argument. I think that's where we need to start. And I know that this was the second engagement from last year, but I think maybe we just took it for granted, because the assumption is Eskom sells electricity to municipalities, not to individuals. And so it is the municipality that must pay Eskom. So when Eskom is not paid, it is not being paid by the entity that bought from it, which is the municipality. So, but then who gets affected? When the municipality, be it the administration, the form of the municipal manager and his or her officials, or the mayor, the speaker, and the councillors, when they do not pay, who gets affected? It is ordinary people. So, but Eskom, what must Eskom do? So I think that is the rock and the hard place that they find themselves in, and I think we need to find a way of extricating ourselves out of that. They've said June is coming. They need 72 billion. June is coming. It's a reality. 72 billion must be raised, and if it's not raised, it doesn't matter. Whatever else we may say, but that's the reality that is facing us right now. And I think the challenge, DG, I think you live with this every day, because the challenge of finding solutions to the problems of governance is quite serious. And one wishes that at every level of government there will be a same level of appreciation. That once they say you are a mayor or you're a speaker or a municipal manager, it is not for show off when you attend funerals. It is responsibility. It is responsibility on behalf of hundreds of thousands and millions of other people whose welfare depends on your actions. Now, when that is missing, then you find this kind of situation. It's as simple as all that. So, but I'll come to that. I do think that there are a number of issues that comrades raised, and it might as well be that you may not respond to everything, but there are key and critical questions that were raised that you may need to talk to. How are you engaging with government? Is it just through the IMTT, which you say these meetings don't produce results? I see the gentleman from COCTA wants to clarify COCTA's role. Yeah, no. What I wanted to say is that if that role does not change what Eskom presented, then it's not assisting us here today. Now that's fine. I'll give him a chance. But I'm just saying whatever he's going to say does not change the fact that the interministerial task team is not producing results. So now the other side of the coin, Eskom, is this, and I think it is part of what comrades were raising. That you have Eskom that is owed a lot of money, and then you have Eskom that is in the news every day for all the wrong things of wasting money, and then coming with the annual tariffs that are just, every time I see in the papers, Eskom requests so much, I actually don't read. Just say, you know what, just put this aside, because I feel no. If things were done differently, could we be here? In terms of so it does not. And then I'm looking at your interests. It's something that you have found, and I think it is something I would want you to really, really think around, because your costs minus the interest have already factored in profit for you in terms of your power generation. Now, here is a municipality that is struggling. It can't pay you 20 million. And then you say, every month we're going to add prime plus 5. It's almost like shooting yourself in the foot. You're not actually even encouraging them to start. It becomes so impossible, they just say, you know what, this is just impossible. We can't do this. And I don't know whether it is the philosophy or the ideology in government in terms of how we run SOEs. What the rationale, whether administrative or political, to say we'll charge you prime plus 5. I mean, it's almost like a private company operating somewhere, and yet you are providing a service that is critical for the development of the country. Lenin once said, communism is Soviet power plus electrification. That's how critical and important he viewed electricity as a source and a means of development. Now, if electricity is social need, how do we treat it? In a way that helps us, but not in a way that actually compounds our problems. Because now we're talking 30 billion. Now the question becomes, how much of that 30 billion is interest and how much is the actual money that has been owed to you? So I don't know whether it is possible not to put interest. But what do you do things that actually just worsen your situation? I'm just thinking around that. And also, is a young. I'm not talking about that checkers in Pumelel. I'm talking about ordinary people who want electricity. They are not given electricity, and then they go and pull electricity and electrify illegally and then consume electricity. who, if you had actually connected legally, they would pay, I assume, and there will be some money that is recouped. Than when you find the whole informal settlement, it's illegal connections. They are consuming that electricity, and they're not paying for it. So, so in terms of your electricity consumption for the month, it goes up, and then the municipality says, but what we have consumed and bought from you is this. Now, when you give us this tariff, then you start to have disputes. So, I think there are also issues of housekeeping that Eskom needs to think very, very strategically beyond just lamenting that we're being owed, and we desperately need to be to be assisted in a way that that actually seek to assist. And also, if you can talk to the interdicts, why do municipalities take you to court? On the face of it, I don't like it. I don't think that should be the way to go. But it has happened. Why? Yeah, maybe let me leave it, because there's something fundamental in the mindset of SOEs versus the public, the philosophy that informs the interaction, the relations. I think we've taken on to some very nasty things in 1994 and factored them into how SOEs are run that go counter to the social responsibilities that and so. But I'm sure maybe at the end, comrades may want to decide what needs to happen. I've heard what you've said, comrade, but how do we take this matter and bring it to the center, and not just make it just by the by? Because because it's correct, the political will, the DG is here. Okay, you can talk and you can talk to him. But at the end of the day, to get municipalities to decide that this money that we have collected, we must prioritize Eskom and not other things, there has to be political intervention, and it's a pity, but maybe it's not a pity. But where is that political will? If the mayors can't do that, then the MECs must. If the MECs can't, then the ministers must. If they can't, then the president must. He's the last man standing. He must come in and say, this is what must happen, and then it happens. Otherwise, we can't manage a crisis by just ignoring it, because it won't go away. And by the time we focus on it, it's a huge thing. So we can't be living on a crisis management mode all the time, as if we don't think or as if we don't plan. So we may need to say, how do we put this to be part of those agent things? There is a portfolio committee, COGTA. Eskom is in public enterprises. There is this interministerial task team, something like that. How do we, or even the municipalities themselves, maybe they also need to be heard. Emalahleni, the second biggest, is it the second? I think the third biggest municipality in Mpumalanga after Bombela and Bushbuck Ridge. Why are you not paying? Why are you even going to court? Let's hear them. And I think this, like we did with SASA, put it at the center of the national discourse, because Eskom affects everybody and everything in the country. So, yeah, let me not lament, but I'm just saying there has to be an appreciation of the centrality of Eskom, and how we respond and deal with it must actually reflect that reality. Otherwise, Yeah, let me hand over to you, Eskom, to respond. Oh, all right. No, it's fine. Let me hear from Cocta and DG. I'm sure if there is any intervention that you may want to make, we'll be able to, to allow you to make that intervention.
Chair, before we go in, just one question I forgot to ask. I just want to pop it in now because I can see we're running out of time. Does Eskom and does Cocta feel that it would be a good idea for the municipalities to come here and explain themselves and explain why they haven't paid these amounts?
Okay.
I'd just like to get their
All right.
input on that. Thank you.
All right. Right. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. My name is Tebogo Motlasuping. I'm the acting DDG responsible for institutional development in Cocta. We, like the chairperson has already indicated, we will gladly appear before the committee to come and give a presentation, but I need to demonstrate some of the things that will be included in the presentations that we will be making to this August House. One is that we will also remember that the decision to establish the IMTT was as a result of the PCC decision that was taken to establish this, and I must indicate, and I will demonstrate, that the IMTT is functional. It has met on several occasions, both at a technical and a political level. Ministers who are part and parcel of this particular IMTT have attended several meetings, and we will also be providing minutes to the effect that this has set, and there were certain discussions made, robust discussions, and as part of those discussions, even the concessions that Eskom are referring to were as a result of the discussions that we had at the IMTT, which was also decided at the political IMTT, where all ministers were represented and they took certain decisions. National Treasury will bear, and also in those technical and political IMTT, Eskom was represented. I must also indicate that this was done in a discussion of in relation to a holistic nature of how we approach these things. There is another elephant in the room, Chairperson, in relation to what we were discussing at the IMTT. The same municipalities that are owing Eskom are the same municipalities that are owing water boards, and are the same municipalities that are being threatened for shutdown with regard to water supply to those municipalities. Now, the IMTT has sat and discussed all those issues, including this debt by Eskom. So it was to say, in the event that in the past, municipalities have made payment arrangements to Eskom, there is a need to look at how are they going also to pay water boards, because we can't look at this one side and not come with a mechanism to include that is being owed. I must further indicate that as a result of the decisions taken at the IMTT, there was a decision that the collective, that includes SALGA, ourselves, DPE, National Treasury, Provincial Treasuries, and Cocta, will then visit those municipalities identified as non-payers of Eskom and water boards. Up to so far, and that team also include Eskom, it include Cocta, it include National Treasury, Provincial Treasuries, and all that. We have visited 38 municipalities that are affected by this non-payment. We have then looked at the mechanisms of how we are going to assist them. Part of it was to see to that Cocta will then do what we call simplified revenue plans, so that we allow this municipality space and we create something very simple for them to can collect revenue in order for them to meet their constitutional obligation. That is, among others, payment of the debt owed to Eskom and water boards. We have done that, and we are in the process of finalizing the other outstanding municipalities in relation to this. We have gone to an extent also as Cocta to look at those payment plans, arrangements that were made by municipalities, and see whether is it feasible, is it proper that these municipalities, with the debt that they have, will they be able to pay? Most of them, I must indicate that they signed those agreements on the basis that they were threatened with cut-offs. And when we visited these municipalities, we realized that even some of them, to be honest with this house, that they are not in a position, when you look at them now, they are not in a position to can even pay the debt that is being owed to Eskom or to the water boards. Now it was for us to look at the mechanisms of how we are going to look into this and see whether those plans that we are developing together with all the relevant stakeholders will assist them to repay or not. Now the issue here is, until such time that we start implementing those plans, those redefined plans that we have done with National Treasury, provincial corporates and provincial treasuries, we will only be in a position to can see once implementation start whether they will have a change in relation to enabling those municipalities to pay or not. Now, what I'm trying to demonstrate, there are a number of issues that we discussed in the IMTT. I can go further and further in relation to whether is it possible under the circumstances, because there was also a parallel mechanism that we have embarked on as COCTA with municipalities and Eskom. We were embarking on what we call the IGR process in relation to the debt that is being owed to Eskom to see, because there were other issues in relation to the credibility of the debt that has been owed. SALGA also came with certain issues that were very, very important for us to note and take decisions on in the IMTT. For example, the issue that relates to the problem that we're having now, we realized that it was both structural and policy related, meaning legislative related. There were issues that were discussed there, also to an extent that SALGA, on a very strong note, indicated that this is not a true reflection of the debt owed by municipalities to Eskom or water boards, for an example. Take into account the issue of prescription, that this debt has been there over years, and there was no way that, for example, Eskom intervened in relation to stopping prescription. So those were the issues, and we said that until such time that the IMTT has dealt with those issues and finalized them and said these are the real issues, this is the real debt that is being owed to municipalities, we acknowledge the fact that Eskom is being owed. But there were those structural issues that were at stake, and policy-related matters were at stake. But then, to cut the long story short, there has been a discussion at intergovernmental level with all relevant stakeholders, including Eskom in this instance, and there was progress that has been made. Right. And there is a report that we will be giving to SCOPA in relation to the interventions that we have made and what we are expecting to achieve in the near future. Thank you.
All right, DG.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening, honourable members. I think, Cindy started at the right note when introducing the issue. She mentioned three things, and I think these three things are things that matter to us, and I'll also talk briefly to the actual payments. She mentioned something around governance, liquidity, and Eskom interim results. Now, if you remember, the interim results are a follow-up from what the qualification that Eskom got last year, and that's where essentially our interest lies. Because the 356 billion that Pagamani is talking about is money that we owe people who bought Eskom bonds, people who invest in Eskom. Now, if they had to exercise their right as per the loan covenants last year, they would have recalled their money and we wouldn't have the money to pay. So it then became important for us to be interested in the qualification that Eskom got and rectify the issues and actually be on their case. What happened immediately thereafter the issues around the qualification is that you then had two issues, main big issues. The liquidity flow stopped. Lenders stopped lending money to Eskom. And then you saw the liquidity issues coming to the surface in a biggest ever way. From October last year, lenders, both local and international lenders, said, sorry, we cannot in any more help Eskom because, one, there's governance issues, and we know what the governance issues were around the board and around management. Everyone was acting at some point in Eskom, all senior management. Then it affected the liquidity. The big challenge came now in January, February, when lenders again were saying, unless if you address it, and then government took over decisive steps, appoint a new board, appoint management, and then there was opening up of some finance support. And mainly saying that we then have a tick, a small tick, not a big one as yet, on the governance things. Now, I'm mentioning this thing because it was a package of issues that the lenders were showing, including rating agencies and people that Eskom goes around for looking for money. Because it was not only governance and liquidity challenges and what essentially were almost an issue with the interim results, but also debt. the non-collection of debt, including efficiencies in Eskom. Eskom had a few years ago, in fact, about 2 years ago, had issues around, in terms of their turnaround, and when they were the war room, as energy war room was in place, they were supposed to come up with some efficiencies gain. Lou will recall this 50+ billion that had identified. And it's going to be interesting that as they approach their challenges, and Chair, you were right, that they must look at the efficiencies that they must exercise to actually bring down the cost so that their challenges are minimal in a way. But for me, I think it's important. We cannot shy away, look away when a plea like this has been made, because I, for sure, in the last 2 months have been seized to the matter with Eskom on their behalf, going to the lenders on their behalf, ensuring that they get the 20 billion rand that they got last week, and finally, including the 5 billion rand that now they paid yesterday back to PIC. We had to come in because clearly they were not going to sustain themselves. And I think the key here is that we know they are being owed by municipalities. We can ignite Section 216 any day and say stop equitable share, but we know constitutionally we cannot pay Eskom the money. Honorable Boy is right, we'll be messing up the whole intergovernmental fiscal system. And we cannot do that on behalf of Eskom. But I think the collective must come together, and I like the spirit of this meeting because it's the collective that must matter, including us where we are, including the IMTT, in the work that they must do, giving instruction. Because Section 216, coupled with non-action and intervention by the municipalities themselves, is going to be meaningless, because reality is that the decision that the Honorable Liz was talking about, including Ms. Ngaleni and us when they visited us, was essentially saying, you have to need parties. The municipality must be on a drive with Machabane to ensure that communities are actually brought to a campaign to actually ensure that payments happen. But I think, Chair, it's important that we recognize that without them, without payments, we are all finished. Eskom is not going to be sustainable moving forward, and we can exercise. Politically, decisions have to be made. I mean, I'm inclined to say the user pay principle cannot be thrown out of the window. You use services, you pay for them. The issue about interest can always be negotiated, that don't charge this much. But as a principle, when you use a service, pay for it. Because if we don't have that as a principle, as we approach our public finances, we are doomed. And I think the collective that Honorable Boy was talking about of government as a whole, the Department, National Treasury, the Department of Public Enterprises, the Department of COCTA, including Energy Department, including SALGA, and this matter be brought to the budget forum is quite critical and important. Because on one hand, we beat Eskom to collect, and when they want to collect, we stop them on another saying, so you cannot switch off because it's politically sensitive. So they are in a fix. But when we engage on their behalf with lenders, their debtors book is staying, it's not sitting pretty. So I think it's a double whammy here. But I think let's hear the cry out. As much as we hear them out, they've got certain efficiencies that they themselves must impose on themselves, and certain good things that they must start doing, and not only focus on what they are being owed, but they must be supported. And I think, Chair, if this meeting can take that resolution that says, we will continue to do what we do. I'll continue, Honorable Boy, writing letters to national departments and say, you are owing. I went to FOSAT. FOSAT is a forum of South Africa's Directors General, where we sit and say, and I've got a list and I pass it around and I say, please look at yourself. You are owing rates in a municipality. We'll continue doing that in support, trying to get these municipalities to get what they have to be paid. But I think they need a collective support. And I like you left the premiers out, Chair, in your summary. You mentioned the MEC, you mentioned the mayor, the premiers are quite equally important as part of addressing and solving this thing, not only through the PPC that Debo was talking about, but also generally as a collective, and say as a country, here's an institution that if it collapses, the whole economy is gone. So I think it has to be supported, while also demanding of them of certain efficiencies and assisting them where possible. And going into the municipalities, this is my last point, going into municipalities because some of them can afford to pay. some of them, they also have to squeeze certain efficiencies out of themselves, because we all know that there's challenges of misusing public funds and not stretching that last rent in municipalities. So it's upon us in our oversight role on municipalities, including COCTA, how do we as a collective engage these municipalities in a way that we unpack their books to see what they are paying and how they are paying it, the kind of tenders they enter into. Is it value for money in terms of all their activities? Maybe through even that focus process. And Chair, I think we must do that. We must actually look at this list that Eskom put together, have a program between ourselves as a targeted intervention that ourselves and COCTA must do on your behalf, and at a reasonable period of time, come back to you and report and say, based on a meeting on such and such a date that you took on the 6th or 8th of March, we went to these municipalities within the next 3 months or so. This is what we picked up, and then I think on that you can then decide whether to call these municipalities to come here or not. And I think between ourselves and COCTA, we should be able to do that, because I still think some of these municipalities, it's not a question of equitable share, that's not enough. It's a question of wastage and the efficient use of public resources. So, and I think we can single those out. And clearly, the point that we are making, and our teams in Treasury have said it to me, and actually there's a memo on my desk that says, please sign off a municipal recovery improvement plan. That goes into the municipality, because some municipalities, the equitable share formula, what they get from the equitable share is not just enough for them to sustain themselves anyway, let alone the revenue base and the rates collection base. They cannot sustain themselves. But we need to identify those and understand which ones are those. But if that's the issue, coupled with some inefficiencies and coupled with not the whole new way of doing and managing public funds, you then have a problem. But at this point in time, I think it's incumbent on us and COCTA jointly go into municipalities with the provincial treasuries and the provincial premier's offices and unpack the challenges, and maybe within the next 3 months bring them through to you, because I think 3 months is a reasonable period if one thinks about some of the things that we have to do.
Thanks very much, DG. Let's hear from Eskom.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thanks to the committee members. I think whilst there are a number of questions that have been raised tonight, I must say that the overarching spirit is the one that we really appreciate, because I think it you know, where it hangs, I would like to maybe use the questions of Mr. Kekana, because I think they summarize and they were quite overarching, because also leading from what the DG of National Treasury has just said, it's very clear that we have to come up with a comprehensive plan. It's been put back to us. I think, Mr. Kekana, you said, what is our strategy? You know, we need to be the ones developing this comprehensive plan, incorporating all the different stakeholders that would like to see assisting in this project, because I think everybody has to put shoulder to wheel, but we need to define it, and it must be underpinned by a very clear, you know, communication strategy that we're going to embark on as we all go out there into public and drive this, this plan. I would unpack one or two of some of the specific items, but I'll then hand over to Pagamani with the team. You know, without losing, for example, one of the key things that is also coming out here is that whilst we are seeking assistance, we as Eskom need to communicate very clearly what we are doing on our side, because a number of things have happened and the culture and the tone has been set, unfortunately, across the country. And some of the things that have happened in our space have also not been conducive to people coming forward in assisting us. I think one of the things I had also earmarked, the interest discussion. Usually when someone comes to the party and say, I'm willing to settle, you know, can you look at the interest? Those are negotiations that you know, as Eskom, and I'm putting my head on the block here, you know, as the audit and risk committee chair, but the DG of National Treasury actually shares the same spirit. Those are some of the things that have to be part of this bigger plan that we're going to put forward. And also speaking from the audit and risk committee's chair point of view, I think the question was asked earlier, you know, around the qualification, whether we've regressed. Our auditors are SNG, Season Taluba Kobodo, who have now merged with Grant Thornton in the last few weeks. I guess there are other issues happening even in that, you know, audit and CA space, which there are a lot of plans to try and resuscitate that whole profession on its own. There are other challenges that we face in that space. But I think what is important is that when the qualification came in 2007, with a number of material irregularities and the reportable irregularities that we are addressing right now, I must say that we actually made an improvement, Mr. Ross, when the interims, we now moved from a clear qualification to now an emphasis of matter. We're not qualifying you, but as auditors, we are raising some concerns to say there's still things to be dealt. So we actually moved a notch up, you know, in terms of getting an opinion that is less onerous.
No, we understand that. That's what we deal with on a daily basis.
Okay,
So that's fine,
no apologies.
Sure.
So what we are then doing is right now working on a clear transformational plan to make sure that we extricate ourselves out of that. We have even asked for an extension on the corporate plan as Eskom to be submitted to National Treasury. Instead of 28 February, we have asked for 31st of March. And some of these plans are going to be clearly articulated in that, in that plan. So I think from a broader point of view, we are committing to an integrated request that we're going to submit. But if I can ask then Pagamani and the team to answer some of the specific questions.
Thanks, Cindy. I must say that I'm really encouraged by the tone of the meeting. I think we have some kind of convergence that is important. But before maybe one could answer, I think my colleagues could help here, because some of the things are making assumptions. We've been there for 6 weeks. But I've been asking a number of questions that have been asked here. And I just want to highlight that we might have appeared to be only pinpointing the debt or the muni debts as the only problem at Eskom. But that's primarily because that was the intention of this meeting. Eskom has severe challenges and we are trying to work on that. It talks to a long-term strategy of Eskom. It talks about the appropriate model, business model that will take us forward. It talks about all the long-term contracts that we have. We need to review. It talks about corporate governance. It talks about the price of coal that we are paying. But at least we have been able to zoom in and identify areas that need special attention. And Chair, I think Eskom would be honored if in September or October or somewhere there, that we can come back and be able to articulate what the journey has been. But let's go back. I think there are two issues that are coming up here. I'll just try and combine the issues. I think the first issue is the acknowledgement that it's a user pay, you know, this thing has to be paid. But there are questions that are coming back that make a lot of sense. And that is some of the people that are paying the price for this. One is they have paid, you know. That's important, that they've paid. And secondly, I think it's an issue that we are not dealing directly with those that we should deal with. Then, next to that is an issue, I think Mr. Boy, you raised it, and that is are we honest in articulating what we need? I'll start from there. Then let me start from this issue. I think, Mr. Protzat, you raised it. Yeah. There's this thing that is known as dilemma of commons. And that is, as a community, we have a social contract of trusting each other, that one of us or an entity that we are reporting to will represent our interest, and accordingly all of us will act accordingly in ensuring that this institution delivers what is expected. Unfortunately, that's a social contract that Eskom has with the municipality. But Eskom cannot go beyond the municipality. And unfortunately, while there are people that are paying, because of that dilemma of commons, we are all grouped together. It's something that we have to look into, but that will take a long, long time. It's a typical example, Chair, is what happened about 3 years back in some of the students that were doing matric, who didn't have access to the leaked exam papers that came up. But it was a blanket decision that was taken. So let's see how we can deal with this, but it involves quite a number of acts, a number of processes, and the solution to that will take very, very long. And by the time we come with a solution, I think Eskom will no longer be existent. As to whether Eskom has been able to deal with some of the municipal managers, I will leave it to my colleagues. I don't know. But there's something that came up in the presentation that is worth noting, Mr. Boyd. And that is, by September last year, the payment was increasing up to about R1 billion or so. It was a painful way of doing it, but we had to cut and the payments were made. But there was a political intervention that said, you can't do this. So our plea, and that is why we're here, and we are very thankful that you have allowed us to be here, thanks, and to talk about this thing, is that we should be allowed to take the decisions while noting that dilemma of commons. Unfortunately, this is the only avenue that is available to us. And should we be stopped, and in fact, if that happens, then we are not going to move anywhere, as we have seen that in October, this started to pick up. In line with that, we since wrote letters through our chairperson to SALGA, to the Minister of Energy, Minister of Finance, to the Minister of Public Enterprises. And we said, we're in a dire situation. This is a process that we're going to undertake. We hope you are aware, because our own act allows us to do so. That's a process that we're going to take. But there are a number of issues I will touch on, and I think my colleagues could come up. Starting from Honorable Member Mr. Ross, I think the Chair of Audit Committee has indicated that we are in a better space. There were 3 issues that we needed to deal with for us to move from qualified to matter of emphasis of matter. It was irregular expenditure, it was liquidity, and it was corporate governance. Are we dealing with people that are corrupt? We did all those 3. The issue of irregular expenditure, we had indicated, because it's about processes, it's about accounting for the money spent. We had covered about 80% of that. So the auditor said, okay, we see there's a liquidity, all of a sudden you'll fund until end of March, by the way, this financial year. They said, we see also that you have dealt with roughly about, at that time it was 6 of the executives whose contract had been terminated. Now it's 9. We are happy with that. We are also aware that at least you seem to be doing something. We are 80% on irregularities. So we are happy with that. That is fine. And that's something that we're going to work on as we move forward. The fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 500 million, again, is something we're going to work on. But probably as we clean this place, we're still going to have some challenges. I don't think in an institution as huge as Eskom would be able to clean this in 1 year, but it's one of the priorities. The debt that is rising, who's going to pay for it? It should be Eskom. And Eskom can no longer continue borrowing to sustain the business. That is when we have then to look at our own structure, our own balance sheet, on our own balance sheet, on debt equity, and we can look at other players that can assist. I think by the time we come in October or so, we'll have a picture as to what should be done. You talk about support inflation rate increases. Yes, I fully agree that at least we should be at inflation rate. The past 2 years at Eskom have not been that great. Last year would be 2016. The increase on the tariffs was 2.2%. No, that was 17. And in 18, yes, we're going to get 5.23, which means over the past 2 years, the increase is 3.75 against inflation of about 6% or so. We are talking to NASA to see how we can manage this. And in all fairness, it's not sustainable. And the rating agencies have raised that as one of their major concerns. The poverty of the people that is in there is something that we are quite aware of. I'm from MJ's Escort in KZN. I'm from Ewembisi Township. Escort, because people don't know unless we've used N3, is between Ladysmith and Pietermaritzburg, somewhere. The per capita income in Escort or Wembis is one of the lowest in the country. But that municipality has been able to introduce prepayments. And everyone pays. Now, we have to take a political decision as to how can then Soweto destroy all the prepayments that are put there. 80%, I'm told, of them that have been put there have been destroyed. It needs the total interjection and the total involvement of the government entities. Yes, we go. We bring the police, we go there, we are protected, and they put the systems in. But as we go out, those things are taken out and illegal connections come in. That is primarily the biggest issue we have. That is why we're sitting with 14 billion debt in Soweto. And if Soweto doesn't pay, why should other municipalities or other townships start paying? It just doesn't make sense for them to pay. So we need to nip this in the bud, and we need a political decision. Are we afraid to speak to the ministers? Mr. Boy, if the minister says when we move and we say we are cutting off, that minister says no, like last time in September. That was before our time. We will call the chairman of this committee and we will indicate that we can't do the job because of these challenges. Honorable Member Cholana, I think you can add other things. You know, this court interdicts, again, you can touch on that here as to how they affect us. The munis are not paying because there's no price to pay if you're not. It's just as simple as that. And the neighbor sees that, why should I pay if this neighbor is not paying and we're still enjoying exactly the same benefits? It's just basic knowledge of knowing what's happening in the township. And that is why when Eskom goes to the townships to then try to put the prepayments, people fight against prepayments, not just about paying, about prepayments. Because you will understand if they will say, okay, put the prepayments, we understand. No, they don't want prepayments, they don't want to pay. And it's going to be part of the culture because it's expanding, hence the debt that is increasing. I myself will do exactly the same thing if I see my neighbor having a good time and not paying and enjoying the benefits. It's just as simple as that. One point that is of concern to me that we have to look into, maybe you can touch on, is maybe why don't we then make sure that mayors and the head of municipalities account for that? I don't know how we can look into that, but it's something that is coming out that I haven't thought about before I came here. You know, the contribution, Mr. Kekan, Honorable Kekan, we are talking about contribution at national government and provincial government. Let's break it down. We can have those numbers. We'll see. As my colleague here has indicated, I don't think we have communicated our strategy well. And we are aware that, you know, because of what has happened at Eskom, there's a lot of negative feel on Eskom when you come to the front and you're trying to talk. But the best way of dealing with that is when you are open and you are able to go to people and say, over the next 6, 12 months or so, this is what we're going to do. You give us a space, we'll deliver. The members of this committee will remember that's exactly what we did with the land bank in my previous term. We came here and we got a lot of beating on what had happened. I was there for like a month or so. In 3 months' time, the chair, you invited us. We came back and we had a 12-year program. And we were giving you this report every month. This is what we have done, and quarterly you will invite us and we'll come here. That was 2008. In 2010, this committee felt that you didn't need us anymore. I remember the last meeting, we were told that, no, you're wasting our time now. We have other things to deal with. Congratulations. Then we left. I think that's a kind of a partnership that will help us a great deal as we move forward. And Honorable Kuno, I fully agree with you. The tariffs do go up, as you have asked us a question. There's an issue of the coal supply. Eskom is the biggest purchaser of coal in the world. And 70% of the coal here in South Africa is consumed by Eskom. But in that midst, there's a lot of coal that is exported outside, and the price is different. There must be a better way of managing this. There must be a better engagement with the suppliers. If we have a 15 or 20-year contract with you, surely there should be some kind of, partnership that allows you to sell at less than the market rate. Those are things that we're going to look into. The issue of people selling electricity, those are things that we have to investigate. Currently, I think we have the investigations at Eskom. We are looking at about 239, 250 people that we are investigating in one way or the other. And because we have encouraged people to whistleblow, to come forth and state all those things that shouldn't have happened that are happening, we're seeing more and more of the people coming in. And it's one of the priorities where you're going to pay particular attention on as we move forward. The meter reading, I think you can touch on that. Then, Honorable Shengwe, the name and shaming, I think my team will talk about that shop. Where is it? The move from 15 to 30 days, again, is not just that. There are a couple of things that we are trying to maneuver and make sure that we make this much lesser, or we make this lesser of the pain than what it is now. The amounts taking interest and out of interest, my colleague will talk about that 14 billion, and what is interest and what is not interest. Are munis giving us the numbers? Are they accepting the numbers that we are giving? Again, this is something that you can talk to. There are unintended consequences. I think we have spoken about that, of us cutting. And my colleague here is going to Harrismith because one of the biggest employing entities there has indicated that if we continue doing this, if we do this, they have to consider their options. That is why she has to be in Harrismith to talk about those things. But it's not just about big institutions. It's also about small businesses that are there and the impact this is having. So this cutting of electricity is not a permanent solution. In fact, it is destructive to the economy, we fully agree. But we have also seen that that's the only tool that we have that forces the municipalities to pay us. Because in most of the places, it's not that people are not paying. It isn't at all. But the money that is paid for electricity is used to pay for salaries. That's an honest answer I can provide you with the legal that I know. So how do we deal with this situation? How do we ensure that the municipalities, if people pay, then they don't face these issues? It talks about reviewing the whole infrastructure and the whole framework of how the payments of electricity is done. But having been in government for so long, to begin to talk about that will take another 15, 20 years. Yet we have this problem that next year we need to have 72 billion that we have to borrow. And the market is worried about the future of Eskom as to whether we can be able to service that debt. I think, Mr. Broadside, we have already spoken about some of the issues that we've indicated. Let me highlight one important thing. That 30 billion is not a bailout. It's the borrowing that Eskom has continually gone to the market to get it. The difference here is what the DG of the National Treasury has already alluded to, is that by July, the investors just stopped. They said, we are tired of this, you are corrupt, and you have a qualified audit, we have regular expenditure, we are stopping, we don't believe in it. So from that July up until February, no one was willing to buy any paper from Eskom. And Eskom had to review its own funding and reduce it by about 48%. Even after reducing it by 48%, we needed to raise 20 billion. This 20 billion was needed by end of February. We needed 10 billion on the 1st of February, another 10 billion on the 28th of February. And the government assisted us a great deal in that. We were funded by 7 banks. We hope that's indication of a changing world that we'll see as we move forward. Prepaid payments, we talked about that. Should municipalities come to school? That would be great, because you will hear their side of the story. And I'm happy, I'll be very happy to see that. I think there are quite a number of issues. Yeah, Honorable Van der Walt, I think most of the issues. I thought okay, let me start, okay. They will be covered. My colleagues will take it. Yeah. I'm just taking some of it. You had 3 issues. Yeah, that will come. I think some of the issues that Honorable Van der Walt has raised, we have touched on. You know, how do we penalize those that should be penalized? I think it's a big issue that we have to go out with here. How do you separate, unfortunately, under the current circumstances, we can't. And which is unfair to quite a lot of people, you know? Because if you pay and we cut you, so why should you pay the next time? You know, it's a dilemma in a way that is very difficult to touch on. And the Eskom has touched a number of issues. The tariff, Chair, we have touched on that. Illegal electricity remains one of our biggest challenges, and we need to do something about it. When they go with the police and security to go and untangle those connections, as they go, those connections come back again. So there must be a better way. But this doesn't talk about Eskom. It talks about our country. It talks about the rule of law. But importantly, it talks about the parliament, and this committee belongs to this parliament because the rules and regulations governing us come through this house. And if this house sees that there are certain policies and acts, regulations that are not adhered to, it's the responsibility of this house to make a call as to what needs to be done. And these are some of the things that you can talk about. It can be electricity, it can be water, it can be cars, it could be housing. The next thing, it could be everything. It is an issue of concern. And having had a privilege of working in the private sector up until I came back here, where we're trying to sell our story globally, that's the tone you're getting outside of South Africa. That you can talk about this story, you know. You can talk about liquidity. You can talk about good financial markets. You can talk about very good audit teams, audited companies up until you had these problems. But your problems are less about that. Your problems is you don't trust that you have strong legal systems and institutions that forces the adherence to the acts and the regulations in your country. But that is not for today. But those are some of the things that will be great to look into. I think my colleagues can touch on some of the issues.
Okay, thank you. Let me start with the interdicts. The interdicts actually, it's not the municipality that's interdicting Eskom. It's actually organized business that has decided, organized business or organized communities and so on, that have decided to take Eskom to court. For instance, Emalahleni, we have a group that was called Save Emalahleni Group that took us to court, together with Resilient Properties Proprietary Limited and others. So, you know, it's all of those people that have decided they're not going to take this and they will take us to court. And basically from the municipality's point of view, we haven't had anything from them. Really, it has been a case of waiting for the D-Day that is going to be the interruptions, unless the court decides otherwise. And from the information I have specifically about Mpumalanga, Emalahleni, is that Emalahleni we're going to court in August. From our legal team, we have asked that we get to court earlier than that, because it means that during this time that we are waiting, the debt is just going to get out of control. And then the two other municipalities who are going middle of this month. So I think it's next week, the 13th and the 15th. Yes, in fact, when we started off the interruptions, 2 years ago, just about, we started off with Northern Cape municipalities. AFRI Forum took us to court, and we won that case. The outcome of the case was that, or of the court case was that we can actually interrupt. So that's when we actually started the interruptions. That was not the only one. Lekwa, I think, was another one where we won. And in fact, there, the recommendation was that organized business can actually pay Eskom directly. And I think this is something that actually talks to our inability to insulate the customers that belong to the municipality. So that is part of what we are going to be discussing with Harry Smith tomorrow, is exactly that. Now the trick is here. The municipality has to agree. And in fact, in Ligwa, the municipality went back to court. They actually went back to ask for an appeal, to appeal that decision. So we kind of tied, you know, we are really in between a rock and a hard place. And I think my colleague also will talk about one or two other things that we have tried. On taking the municipalities or the municipal managers to court, we have done that. In Kwakwa, I think Louis was still the general manager of Free State when we did that, so he can talk more about it. We took Machabeng as well to court. In fact, the outcome of that process was that those two municipalities must pay us. They were in contempt of court, and I can certainly recall the Machabeng municipal manager was listed there as one of the people that have to respond and take accountability for not paying us. And that process has literally just been on and off, and you can see the debt in those two municipalities has actually skyrocketed, partly because of the court process. And I think in between, what has also happened, Chairman, is that we have then also had, the political instructions to stop the disconnections. So I think part of the contribution from our side is that we have been instructed not to, not to interrupt, and that's why the debt has literally just spiraled out of control. And I think that talks to Honorable Desiree's questions that she also raised, that what was our contribution to this? What we are doing here today probably should have happened 5, 10 years ago, and maybe we would be sitting in a different position. Chair, the illegal connections, I think I will leave to my colleague, and the prepaid meters. I wanted to also just talk to the issue of interest. Yes, the interest versus capital breakdown. Our interest in this 13.3 billion is about 3.5 billion. So in terms of the in Duplam, which was raised the last time, it's certainly not applicable for the municipal debt, but for the Soweto debt, it is applicable. But we can give you the figures later about that. But there we do have an issue of in Duplam. And then there was also another question about, how do we find out about the companies
Just wait. What is in Duplam?
It's where your capital, where your interest is more than your capital. I think that's a simple way of understanding it.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. When you look at your composition of your debt, your interest is more than your capital. Okay. Coming back to those name and shame, how do we find out? We do have a process in our company. We do have a process where we audit our meters and we fix them. So as we audit, we fix. But there are two things that we have picked up. The one thing specifically in Pumelela, what we have picked up is that some of the meters have been damaged. Some of the meters don't work. Other meters are actually disabled deliberately. So if you look at the ShopRite case, for example, technically the meters have a way of scaling up or showing you the correct readings. And what the people do is they take out what we call the K factor, but what it is really is just a simple way of talking about, the ratios and, without getting too technical. But it's that K factor assists you to get the right reading of what a person is consuming. So what happens is, and in most cases you will find that our own employees or the municipality's employees will also be involved in that process, where they take out the K factor so that the meter actually reads less than what you are consuming. So I think here this is probably what happened. And we have found in some cases, especially where you've got developments of new shopping malls, for example, where they actually built in the defects during construction. So the first bill that goes to your shopping mall is far less than what you should be getting. And we only find it out later on when you actually do the calculations and you realize, but surely there are some leakages somewhere. And when you do your checks, you actually find out that from the outset, the meter was actually installed defective deliberately. I also wanted to deal with the issue of dispensing the 50 kilowatt hours that Honorable Member was talking about earlier. How the process works with free basic electricity is that the municipality has to give us a list of all their indigents and say, Eskom, here are 10 indigents in Soweto. You have to configure your meters so that they can receive their 50 kilowatt hours free. What happens is that those lists are not updated. So it's not a question of I not getting the, not being able to load my 50 kilowatt hours, because when you go to the vendor, they give it to you automatically. So you will get a token that has a line of your FBE and then the units that you buy. So what we find in most cases is that we don't, customers don't get their free basic electricity because we haven't received that, the list of the correct list of indigents from the municipality. It's actually the municipality's role to supply us with that list. Otherwise, we're unable, from an Eskom point of view, to tell who's indigent and who's not. I think the issues of smart meters, smart metering, if I can ask my colleague also to just talk to those issues.
Okay, thank you, Chair and the honorable members. At the core of the distribution business, there's two suppliers of electricity at distribution level, municipalities and Eskom. Eskom supplies almost 48% of the customer base in South Africa, and municipalities are supplying 52%. There's a licensing regime under NERSA, which gives Eskom a license to dispense electricity in their own areas and municipal areas. We electrify almost 200,000 customers per annum in our areas of supply, given by, we are the agent of DOE, Department of Energy, and we do that every year. We are watching the space to have universal access to electricity by 2020. The challenge with the illegal connections, which was highlighted by one of our honorable members, is that the areas where you have illegal settlements, those areas must be first be proclaimed by municipalities to say there are areas where they will be building houses before you can invest your infrastructure. So there are constraints already, there are legislative constraints to do anything about permanent solutions for illegal connections. Though there's a will, at one point we even said where you have one household with multiple dwellings, each household will have to have a meter. But municipal bylaws don't allow that. So you have to change that, which was the question that Honorable Boy was asking. Which laws do we need to visit? I think there's a number of regulatory policies and laws that we need to visit and check whether these things are not really creating constraints from acting in terms of operational prowess. So we have to look at that. We will probably have to bring it when we bring feedback in terms of what needs to be done. The licensing issues are critical because Eskom cannot go to customer A in the municipal boundaries and disconnect or negotiate a deal. Like we have in Gauteng, we have PCC came to us and said, we want you to directly supply us after the City Power incident. And they approached us and we said, technically we cannot do it, but we can assist. Then the municipality wanted to take us to court because they have laws that govern that process. So if there are changes, it should be the licensing regime that needs to be looked at as to who actually should be doing what. The long-term solution for South African distribution business is an unregulated business where you have customers that can choose who to get supplied from and who is the best service provider. And those kind of things are discussions that must be taking place in the restructuring, which Honorable Ross spoke about, EDI, RETS. That time, that was the idea, to have municipalities and Eskom having distributors that will be supplying all to all with all the services required. So we need, how can we look at restructuring the industry moving forward? Will it solve the current problem? Not now. It will take long. I think Pagamani spoke about long-term things and medium-term. Short-term, I think Honorable James spoke about wholesale metering. There will come a time in this country where if we can agree and there's a law that says all households and small, medium businesses are being measured on smart metering or prepaid meters. And that's not a choice of a customer, but it is the provision of electricity. These problems that we are talking about will be resolved. An example, Tshwane has installed meters in some few households. With those meters, if you default on rates, taxes, and other services, even if you put 1 million rands to top up for electricity, the meter automatically rejects your 1 million rands because you have not paid 100 rands of your rates and taxes. That's the solution. It is there. And we need to couple it with the rule of law that Pagamani spoke about, because once you do that, you will have issues of rule of law. How do you cover the poor in the process? There are systems and technologies that can easily deal with the poor, particularly within the indigent provision of FBE. And those things, we are doing them in our area of supply where we have prepaid and meters. So we are saying that We need to come with decisions, and maybe quick decisions, to say prepayment now should be the way to go, like we are doing with the CFLs, the bulbs. Now you go to the shops, you won't just get a bulb, because there was a law that says you must deface this for a demand-side management. We can do the same thing with the metering system, that customers must pay upfront, and there's a lot of benefit to that, because I can control my load, I can control the way I manage my money, and so forth. And when I'm not home, I'm not paying anything, because it's not consuming. And but for that to happen, you need the rule of law also, because people have a way of bypassing these meters and so forth. But where it is normal, the payment rates are very high. And I think that's the immediate action. The other issue which we also have to look at is the concessions that the IMT, and maybe to charge on the IMT, the reflection by COCTA is spot on. There has been a lot of discussions, a lot of meetings, a lot of really real issues that needs to surface. But one issue that is still outstanding is the service delivery agreement that the municipality and SALGA are pushing for, that Eskom must sign it. And it's got also its own consequences, and we are looking at how best do we deal with that matter. But from an operational point of view, there's a lot of progress that has been done in the IMTT, and the reflection is spot on. All we need to do is the speed that these reflections should turn our debt down, not going up. And that's where our dilemma is. I think maybe it was misunderstood to say IMTTs are not working. They are working, but we are not seeing the results in terms of the rands and cents. The discussions on debt are happening, but we are not getting the consequence or the benefit of those discussions in terms of money coming in. For example, we discussed the concessions.
All right. No, that's fine. I think don't exemplify it.
Okay.
Fact is, you are meeting, the meetings are happening, but the money is not coming.
Yes, that's the main issue.
That's where we're focusing.
Yeah.
We're not concerned about the meetings, concerned about the outcome.
The outcome for the chair, if I were to reflect back on the concessions, if it will be good that those concessions can be taken seriously. Municipalities said, you guys are asking us to pay you 15 days into the month. We cannot. And we said, fine, we'll allow you 30 days. Even within that 30 days, we are not getting any money coming in. So they are not helping us. Interest, we said we'll remove the 2%, go to 2.5 instead of 5%. That will at least alleviate the problem. Nothing has happened. The same municipality. So we are saying that the concessions can continue. We can go on and on with the concessions. But if they are not resulting into money coming in, they are just fruitless. Now, when we look at write-off, I think there was an issue about writing off the debt. We can all agree that, yes, write off the debt. But next year, this time, if we don't deal with the systematic issues, we will be sitting again with a new debt. Because you're going to develop a new debt, you have not solved the problems. And I welcome the suggestions that we have to go back and look at other parts of the law. How do you deal with the individuals that are causing the problem? So we will respond to that, Diana, when we come back, because I think these are good ideas that we have to really start looking at this thing deeper than the way we're looking at it. I think where we're looking at the relationship between the customer and the supplier. As the chair has actually outlined it in your summary, that we have a contractual agreement with the municipality, not the customers in the municipal areas. So when we deal with the customer, we deal with the municipality, not the customers on the other side. So we will have to resolve those moving forward. But I think there is the meter reading that is happening in the areas where we have conventional meters. I think it's Honorable Boyd that brought it. Estimations are taking place in most areas, and in the municipal areas they are happening. But in most cases, it's 3 months estimations. Once, because you don't go every month to go and read a meter. But after 3 months, there's a reconciliation with the actual reading, and the customer is billed accordingly. Where the problem is when the bill is just too high, and the customer does not even understand why this bill is so high, even if we have an actual reading, because there are leakages. Leakages could be a neighbor is tapping on your meter, and you don't realize that, then the bill just goes high. So those kind of things, we will have to relook at them. But the best solution is still prepaid metering. You have to avoid all the meter reading costs. meter reading leakages and the losses and so forth. So, and we also have a program called active partnering with the municipalities, most of them, where we have signed an agreement to say, where you have problems with billing, because we have the skills in-house in Eskom, we will provide you with those skills. Some municipalities have taken us on that. Some are just saying, well, we are okay, but they are still owing us money. So we need to enforce some of the decisions that we have made at the IMTTs. Thank you.
Okay. No, that's fine. Let's see. Right. No, comrades, okay, just a minute. The issue of prescriptions. All right, okay. How do you avoid debts prescribing? Okay, all right, okay. Comrades, okay. Just hang on this one question that...
Should I deal with prescription?
Yes.
According to the legislation as we understand it, if debt is older than 3 years, it does prescribe. However, what does interrupt the prescription is if you sign, you acknowledge the debt. So this is one of the reasons why you also see that the debt has not prescribed in this particular case. And I think for me, again, the point to amplify is that you have to find a permanent solution to stop the bleeding so that you can move forward. And then all of these things can then be put in place. I think Eskom is quite open to, writing of debt. However, we say, let's find the solution first so that we don't find ourselves in this situation again. Soweto has been written off 2 times already, if not 3, and we're still sitting in the same place. So we would like to avoid that if it's possible.
All right. Comrades, I want to suggest that I've heard what the DG of National Treasury has suggested, and I think these processes can go parallel. And I'm also hoping that whatever strategy Eskom develops in terms of communication, in terms of this and that, must be linked to the IMTT process so that you don't have some other process out there, because you want to keep these with you so that it remains that collective process. But I want to suggest that maybe, comrades, let's look at engaging not only Eskom now, but the other role players. National Treasury, COCTA, SALGA. Like I said, let's put this at the center of the national discourse. And then DG, maybe that is where some of the suggestions that you have brought in, could be spoken to. So this engagement does not have to wait for 3 months, because it is us now bringing the parties now here and saying, talk to us. What has transpired? Where is the problem? What is it that may need to be done? Comrade Kuno. And then we can have continuous engagement to keep, I'm sure you have seen how we've engaged with SASA, SABC, SAA, even correctional services, continuously engaging and cutting the fat and narrowing it down to things that can and should be done with time frames and specifics, who should do what, and until we come to a solution. I think that's what we may need to look into, and then we could. I think we can discuss amongst ourselves. Maybe in the next week or 2, we could have a date, and then call the parties that are involved, and also maybe find space to engage the municipalities, because they need to be heard, and we also need to hear them. to say, but what are the issues, what are the challenges? Can we leave it at that, comrades? No, we check with Ntombi. We already have those documents. All right, comrades, please, just a minute. DG and acting DDG from COCTA, Nani from Eskom. Thanks very much for this engagement. Like we've said, it's not the last one, but it's a beginning of a process to assist on these matters. Okay, thanks very much. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock, Sanral.